Because Japan expanded a state of emergency just last week, didn't it? Just how bad has this fourth wave proved to be?
That's right. We're actually in the third state of emergency here in Tokyo, and the government did expand it to other parts of the country recently. And they also extended the state of emergency through to the end of this month. And what they were hoping was the impact of that would, lead to a decline in new virus cases, and that would reassure the public, and we could sort of move into a getting ready for the Olympics, in sort of full-fledged run into the Olympics. But the virus cases haven't really come down that much. They've come down a little bit, but we're still seeing around 5,000 or 6,000 new cases every day here. There are areas of the country which are under particular strain. Osaka, Japan's biggest city in the west of the country, is a particular hotspot. Case numbers in Tokyo haven't really come down much. So the desired effect of the state emergency hasn't been seen yet. And that's a concern. Until we see a real decline in those coronavirus cases, I don't think you can expect that public opinion is going to change. We may be looking at, opinion polls going right up to the start of the game, showing the public's opposed. Now, in previous Olympics, there is generally opposition to the games, some degree of opposition to the games before they take part. And then when they start, people kind of come around to being supportive of the games and everything goes okay. But this is really new territory here. We've not had anything like this before. So will the public continue to oppose the games, even if they do take place? And will we continue to see demonstrations, as we've seen here, against them?
So just back on that state of emergency, what does that actually mean for people living there in terms of restrictions? Are health systems coping? I mean, I can understand why locals there would be fearful to add more pressure on health systems if they're already facing, sort of something of a crisis.
Sure. So the state of emergency really is a call for people to stay home, for businesses to either close or to close early each day. There's a ban on serving alcohol now in restaurants, and of course bars are mostly closed here. So these are the strongest measures we've seen so far under the various states of emergency that we've had. There's no strong enforcement of this. There's no real fines that have been imposed on people. So you are continuing to see large numbers of people out and about. And I think, that's something we've seen internationally is just the fatigue level of having to constantly, think twice about going out and being told by the government that you should be at home. People are just tired of that. So even here in Japan, where people generally follow the rules fairly carefully and do think about the greater good of the public in general, there is a degree of fatigue of that, and people are going out and about more. So even though we're in a state of emergency, the impact of it hasn't been particularly strong. And as you mentioned, the medical system is the real concern. The hospital beds for COVID patients are about half capacity now in most cities. So that's a level which there is a degree of slack there if things get worse, but not much. So people's concern is that as we go into the Olympics and as people start to arrive, we're expecting, could be around 100,000 people or so who are just the athletes and the officials and, other people that are involved in making the games happen. There's still a large number of people that are coming into the country, even though there are no foreign spectators. The concern is that could then trigger some kind of, either super spreader event or at least increase the level of infections. And that then could push the medical system, into a state of, chaos, essentially. And that's what people want to avoid. So it's really a sense now that, let's not do this thing which could make the situation much worse than it already is. For many Japanese, that seems like a fairly obvious decision, to take. And in normal circumstances, I don't think anyone would think about having a a major international sporting event. But of course, it's been planned for some time. It's been pushed back by a year already. And the government and the IOC have said there will be no further delay. There has been suggestions that it would be better to push the games back to perhaps the autumn or even, next year. That's been ruled out. So essentially the question is, will it happen or will it not happen? It's up to the IOC to decide whether it will happen or not. And so the Japanese government has to just put on a brave face and say, we will do everything that we can to make sure that it's safe and this doesn't lead to, a big surge in COVID cases.
Alastair, Gale, live there in Tokyo. I appreciate the update. Thank you for that. We'll watch that space really closely. Thank you.
My pleasure.